Hey Spooksters, and welcome back to another episode here on Three Spooked Girls. My name is Tara, and as always, I'm here with my ghoul friend Jessica.
Hello.
Hello. And today we are continuing our coverage on Judy Garland. We did ask in the Facebook group if you guys wanted another Micah Miller episode with kind of the rest of the stuff, and I just keep finding stuff. But yes, it will be coming at some point, but we're going to work on finishing up Judy so that way after Micah and next and like listener, I don't even know what fucking day this stuff comes out on, but you know, the rest of the schedule. And then we'll go on to our next big thing, which I'll be honest, I was not super into it at first, but then Jessica like outlined and then I got excited because I thought it's kind of like a broad topic, but we're focusing on certain aspects of it. So it'll be great. I'm excited.
I had to sell it correctly. I knew that.
Yeah, it's okay. But if you are new here, you can follow us on social media. We're on all the things. We have a link tree in the show notes that you guys can check out and find everything about us. Facebook, Instagram, everything, all the crap. And because I already mentioned our Facebook group, we are Three Spooked Girls official. And yeah, like it's just a super fun place. We love it. Seems like you guys love it. And the group always gets to do fun things like decide the fate of some episodes sometimes on or pick one, vote on one type of thing. So yeah, if you want in on that, go over there. Even if you're not super into Facebook, just do it and just come to our group. That's fine.
That's true. We like that idea.
I don't even like scroll my like homepage really. I just always go to my groups. I start with ours.
I keep saying that Facebook's is now just groups and like your auntie, but like it's like groups, and I love the groups. And Tara and I are in so many of the same ones now because it'll be like this meme, you have to see it, and then I'm like share it with her or tag her in it, and it's like she's not a member, and I'm like, bitch, why are you not a member of this group? It's hilarious. And so.
Yes. And if you would like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/Three Spooked Girls. For as little as $1, you get one bonus episode a month. And sometimes those are video episodes like this one if you're watching on YouTube. 5 and up get ad-free episodes, typically the day before publish date. So if any of that interests you, go check it out. But yeah, that is all we got. And then, like I said, another Micah Miller episode will be coming. I just need a couple more days of research and organizing my stuffs, but we'll go ahead and get into Judy now. So if you guys missed part 1, come back to this one later. Go watch that first, or listen, whatever you're doing first, because that's like it was background on her parents, on her childhood, bringing us through Wizard of Oz, which yes, we still have our Wizard of Oz background. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to get into more fucked up antics that Hollywood did to Judy, including a little overlap from some stuff we talked about in the last episode, but it will make sense. So one of the things that they loved to do to Judy was put her in front of a mirror and compare her to a mannequin. And it was the fat quote mannequin.
Stop it.
I swear. They would ask her, they'd be like, do you want to look like that? Do you want to look like that? And yeah, they said that to her about the mannequin.
I'm so sad.
I know. And like we touched on the last episode, they were controlling like everything she consumed in any way, shape, or form, whether that was food or, you know, pills, things like that. And if she was caught with something she wasn't allowed to have, they took it from her. They didn't give a shit. Now, Mr. Mayor and the other MGM bosses were said to be worried about any extra weight that she might gain. And they would even call her fat little pig with pigtails.
That's terrible.
I know. Disgusting. And like I mentioned in part 1, her diet pretty much consisted of chicken soup, which was basically just broth, black coffee, a ton of cigarettes, and then the pills. One of the things about Judy is she had I don't know if I mentioned this in part 1, but she had a really, really big sweet tooth, which I'm like, I can relate because I have a really bad sweet tooth. So they were just going back and forth with her. Like, I'm assuming that's some of the like not allowed stuff that they would find her with, like probably candy or something. And then like we mentioned, Wizard of Oz was when the diet pills and stuff came into play. After Wizard of Oz, she was actually working working on 2 movies at the same time. She would be in the rehearsal stage for one while she was already shooting the other one. And basically, she just was like at the studio, I would say probably 24 hours some days. Like she was just always
Mhm.
fucking there working. And this is like when the pet pills got like popular, you know, with her and her
Mhm.
co-stars. In an interview, she said they'd give us pet pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. Then they'd knock us out cold with sleeping pills. Then after 4 hours, they'd wake us up with the pet pills again. That's the way we worked, and that's the way we got thin. That's the way we got mixed up, and that's why we lost contact with the world. End quote.
No, it totally makes sense that that's what would
Yeah.
happen to you.
Right? So awful. As someone who takes medication for insomnia, 4 hours? You're groggy as shit. Like, what the
Right?
hell? I need like 8 to 9 hours. I don't sleep that long, but like I need that much time allotted till I have to function. Like,
Right?
oh my
That's
god.
so little time.
It is. It is. It's crazy.
'Cause it's not like, get 4 hours of sleep, get up and go sit on your couch. It's like 4 hours and then get up and go work.
Here's some coffee, here's a cigarette, here's your uppers, let's fucking go. Ugh. So I watched a lot of interviews, and some of the ones that like stuck out to me the most was when her kids were with her. They talk about her mom, of course. So in terms of Ethel providing, she said she would sort of stack in the wings when I was a little girl, and if I didn't feel good, if I was sick to my tummy, she'd say, "You get out there and sing, or I'll wrap you around this bedpost and break you off short." So I'd go out and sing. And then it goes into that quote I was just saying about they had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills. Mickey sprawled out on one bed and me on the other. Then after 4 hours, they would wake us up and give us the pep pills again so we could work 72 hours in a row. Half the time we were hanging from the ceiling, but it was a way of life for us. Like it was their norm, unfortunately and heartbreakingly. It was their norm. And she goes on to say, at times I had been pretty much of a walking advertisement for sleeping pills. Even though pills come on doctor's prescriptions, as mine did, they can be a tremendous strain on the nervous system. And she talks about it so much, like how she was a poster child for like abusing prescription stuff, you know, because they
Mhm.
were feeding them to her. And then, like, I'm pretty sure all her kids feel this way, but Lorna, one of her daughters, obviously the other one's Liza, she said, I do think my mother was a victim of the studio system, but it also gave her the ability to channel her talent into all of us as an audience. It was really a double-edged sword. You guys will see that too. Like, it gets more heartbreaking. Like, if you think it's already been bad, it just continues. And oh my God, poor Judy. Judy was married a total of 5 times during her life. The first one was at 19, and she eloped with David Rose, which we already know people weren't fucking happy
Ooh.
about this. Yes, on July 28th, 1941. Now, MGM was fucking mad. They were mad. They were like, you're gonna not tell people about this. Like, you're a teenager still. No. She said basically what MGM was like saying to her and stuff was, quote, nobody should be married at 19, although you couldn't have made me believe it then. But it took me 6 years to convince movie people I wasn't permanently 12 years old wearing my hair in pigtails. Because they were still trying to keep her this little girl. And it's
Right,
like at 19, technically you're an adult. Just saying. I mean, I know you're still
right.
a teen, but
It's really hard to sell her as a 12-year-old if she has a husband.
yep. She's like, too bad I'm an adult, guys. Get over it. And, you know, since they went and eloped, MGM just had to suck it up and deal with it. Like, get over yourselves. How dare someone of age do something? And like, let's be real, during that time, I feel like even though like now we're like, holy shit, like 19, but it's like back then I feel like that was kind of old.
Right.
Older.
Yeah,
Cause like there was people getting married at like 15, 16 and shit. Like,
I was thinking that. I was like, "Wow."
yeah.
But I guess they're trying to sell her as a 12-year-old. MGM is like, "12's a little young." So
Right. So what else happened was that MGM had a problem with was she got pregnant and her mom and MGM were fucking pissed. Now, also I do have to point out at this time on the 4th anniversary of Frank's death, which is also Ethel's birthday, which I was kind of like, oh.
Frank
Ugh.
is like, "I'm just gonna fuck you over one more time, Ethel." Just
Yeah, so she got married to some dude. His name is slipping my mind right now, but he was fucking awful according to Judy and her sisters. He was just trying to come all in and act like he was like gonna fucking take control of Judy's finances and all this other shit. And thankfully, Ethel's too like selfish and greedy to allow this to happen. I mean, you
I
should
laugh, but,
like, I don't want to say good on her because she's not a good person, but it's like good
no.
on you for like doing fucking something, I guess.
Right.
But Ethel was like, hell no, bitch. And basically, like, that didn't last as that goes. But the daughters obviously were rightfully so pissed that she did that on the fucking anniversary. Ethel.
But also now you just have one day. You have a birthday and an anniversary.
Right.
Forgets both.
And the death anniversary too. Like, geez. And obviously Ethel, when she got pregnant, was like, hell no, motherfucker. She said, quote, you can't have this baby. And then Judy was pissed, obviously, because she's like, I'm a married woman. Like, this is my baby. What the fuck? And she says, it's mine. I have to have it. But nope, nobody was allowing her to have it. She says she was taken to a shabby little office outside of Los Angeles, and that was that. And then she said the marriage was never the same. I was despondent. I didn't want to make a botch of my relationships with people. The only thing I did well, it seemed, was work. And the regiment at Metro wouldn't let me stop working long enough to be really married. They still regarded me as their personal property.
Didn't her contract expire when she was 19? Like, as like they couldn't do anything else?
Well, the initial one was for 7 years, and she signed it when she was 13.
Okay.
So technically she was still in it.
Got it.
Now, over the next, still in the 40s, over the next like few years or whatever, there's a lot that's going on. So in October of 42, she has the premiere of For Me and My Gal, which was her first like grown-up role in a movie. And in July of the following year, this was her concert debut at Robin Hood Dell in Philly. There was 15,000 people in attendance.
Wow.
And 15,000 more turned away.
Damn.
Yeah, it's incredible. She gets divorced from David Rose on June 7th, 1944. And after that, keeps going. She keeps trucking. Because, like, if you aren't familiar, just go to, like, her wiki page or her IMDb page, like, and you'll see all the movies and, like, how close they are, you know? Like I said, she was doing 2 at a time. Like, oh, my God. So after that, cue the next husband, Vincent Minnelli, might sound familiar, in 1945. And they met after Meet Me in St. Louis. He was the director. So they got married on June 15th. And that was the wedding that Mr. Mayer gave her away. I'm like, that's so weird.
It's kind of like that weird, like, I'm your father, because in the first episode you mentioned like how he was kind of like a father figure to her. So like in a fucked up way, he was fulfilling that role.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I totally understand the concept, but it's still like icky. So I'm like, ugh. And then she had her first child, a daughter, on March 12th, 1946. You might know her. Her name is Liza Minnelli. And none of her kids like have really said anything bad about her. When Liza's talked about growing up with her, she said, my mother was a very strict disciplinarian, but fair. She never overpunished us. So, you know, being like, you know, my mom wasn't abusive or anything. Just in like clips I've seen, like you can just tell how much she loved her kids. Like you can just tell. It's very, very evident. During this time with Liza as a baby, obviously this wasn't diagnosed back then, but experts looking at her now and everything believe that she did have postpartum depression. She ended up staying in the hospital afterwards for a month. And she said during that time, she was like, there were no middles, no times where I was just tranquil. I was used only to screaming attacks or excessive love bouts, rivers of money or no money at all, seeing my mother constantly or not seeing her for weeks at a time. And she said that in an interview with the Times. She does return to MGM after Liza's born on December 1st with a contract for $300,000 a year. Well, in 1947, her mental health does struggle quite a bit. She's said to have suffered her first, quote, nervous breakdown in April of that year during the production of The Pirate. And then a couple months later, on July 16th, this was the first time she attempted to take her own life. And in result for that, she was committed to Las Campanas Sanitarium, and then she went to Austin Riggs Center in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Now, she didn't stay there long. She only stayed for 2 weeks, and after this, she went back to MGM because the premiere of Easter Parade, and I've actually never watched this, but that's apparently her top grossing film to date.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, damn, more than Wizard of Oz? Because like Wizard of Oz, like obviously later, but it's like Wizard of Oz got like a cult following. You know what I mean?
It's
That's
true.
crazy. But then some trouble started. Judy's like always been a hard worker, but a theme we're gonna see, it's like kind of spoilers a little bit, but not really. As she got further into her addiction, she became much less reliable. And in 1948, she got suspended from MGM, and then again the next year in 49 she was suspended from the film Annie Get Your Gun for showing up late, because it wouldn't be, I had this later in my notes but it's fine to talk about here, it wouldn't be like, oh, like she's like 15 minutes late or 30 minutes, you know, because traffic, but like no, say like they had a morning call time at like 7 or 8, she'd come at like 2 or 3. And then around the time she got suspended from Annie Get Your Gun, she went to Peter Brent Brigham Hospital in Boston for, quote, rest. She stayed there for 11 weeks.
A lot of rest.
49 was a hard year for her because on June 19th, she had another attempt. And apparently, someone thought it was a great idea to publish that. And that made national news, obviously, because she was like so popular. And by September 29th of that year, she was released from her MGM contract. She continue to have hardship. I mean, like I said, her whole existence, but the early 50s were not super nice to Judy either. This is when she not only worked, like had to negotiate being released from MGM, she also separated from her husband, from Minnelli at this time. And basically with all the suspensions, being let go from MGM, the suicide attempts, the talk of, you know, her substance abuse, it was just so much being talked about Judy. But she meets someone. Sydney is described as a somewhat questionable man about town with a questionable past. That's
Oh,
such a
Sydney.
mouthful, right? I'm like, okay. So like obviously he didn't give a flying fuck what anybody was saying about Judy, you know. And then on April 9th of 1951, she opens a new show at the London Palladium, performing twice nightly. She's doing a bunch of shows and stuff. And then in October, the legendary Palace Theater opens, and you know, she's got a show that ran 19 weeks and broke all of the box office records. Like things were finally making an upturn for her here. She also divorced Minnelli during this time. Like their stuff was all taken care of. And on June 8th, 1952, she got married to, we could just call him Sid. Sydney left, the
Mhm.
questionable man with a questionable past.
Past. Questionable man about town with a questionable past. That's a great way to be characterized.
And then Sid and Judy welcome their daughter together on November 21st, 1952. This is Lorna. It's interesting because she obviously has done a lot of interviews on her mom and stuff like after she passed. And she acknowledges like the mistreatment and the abuse, but she refuses to accept the depiction of being a tragic figure, because Lorna says, quote, she hated being called a tragic figure. We all have tragedy in our lives, but that does not make us tragic. She was fun and she was warm and she was wonderfully gifted. She had great highs and great moments in her career. She also had great moments in her personal life. Yes, we lost her at 47. That was tragic, but she was not a tragic figure. And I feel like, you know, that kind of goes in the wavelength of like, as people that go through horrible things, like you don't, I mean, I don't know, for myself, like I obviously, like, I don't like calling myself a victim and things like that. So like, I could see how that like is parallel. You know what I'm saying? I think people mean it in like the most loving, supportive way when they do say that about her, though. I don't think they're saying it as like in a bad way. You know what I mean?
I
Like, just
mean,
as someone from, like, obviously, we're not connected to Judy or anything.
right. I think that is tragic is that people took this young, talented, beautiful girl and broke her down and basically made her feel like she was nothing, and then got
Mhm.
her addicted to drugs, and then turned around when they created this monster, because they created a monster, and they went, "Oh, not our problem." And
Yeah,
they
and
didn't
threw
get her
her away.
help. Right, and that's the tragic part is that, like,
Yep.
they created a monster and then they put her out in the world and then she had to, like, fight for it. Ultimately, like, spoilers, we all know that Judy died, so, like
Oh, yeah, I already mentioned it.
yeah,
Already gave
and
that
that
away,
and
sorry,
that she was
Lorna
young.
spoiled it.
Right,
Yeah.
so she was young, so it's, you know, that is tragic because Judy could have turned the world or turned her world around again. Because
Yeah.
you're gonna tell this, she
She did
does
it.
that time and time again.
Yeah, she's the queen of comeback. Like, that's like what she says in interviews and stuff. Now that we're further into Judy's adulthood, she actually took that opportunity to get the fuck away from Ethel. At the time Lorna was born, actually, they weren't on speaking terms or anything. And she told all the doctors and stuff, my mother is not allowed in here. And of course,
Good.
Ethel threw a fucking fit and all that shit. As someone who did that with their toxic mother, I'm like, go Judy, go Judy. Um, but Ethel died on January 5th of 1953, and Sid also during this time scooted into he was like a producer too. So he was already like in
Mhm.
the business and the industry and stuff. He shifted to being her manager, which we all know that's always very not good. Like that's bad.
We've seen it play out in Kelly Clarkson's life.
So many, so many. So he became her manager. They were working on getting her back on the stage and they got her back into a movie. She was in A Star Is Born. I've actually never watched this version of it. I watched the late and I know there's a remake before the Lady Gaga remake.
Mhm.
No, I think just one. I was like, maybe two. I don't know.
There's 3
But
versions all total.
oh, okay, okay. So just one other
Maybe
one there.
more, actually. I'm gonna Google it because you
I
know,
don't know.
it's gonna bug
That
me.
movie traumatized me. It was a good movie, but I got traumatized. With movies like that, oh, I liked it, but I'm just like, "Oh my god, I went into it blind." So, that was fun.
Oh, there's a 37, a 54, a
Mhm.
76, and a 2018.
Okay, so 4. Got it. If you know which one you like best, let us know. I've only watched the Gaga one. And obviously, that movie had a lot of great success because she actually received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for that film.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and also something interesting and fun during this time was Judy became very popular with the LGBTQ community. This started back in the 50s. We'll talk about it more at the end too. But basically, one of the articles said not only did her image speak to different elements within the male gay subcultures, but she also came to represent gay men's resilience in the face of oppression. And it said, stemming from the perception of her as a star who had been knocked down only to triumphantly rise back up again. A comment from one fan included in Heavenly Bodies said, quote, her audience, we the gay people, could identify with her. We could relate to her in the problems she had on and off the stage. And yeah, I got some more info later that kind of like came to fruition in like the 60s, but we'll get to that in a minute. Sid and Judy welcome their son named Joey. He was born on March 29th, 1955. He also has been vocal about his mom. He said, quote, there were times where my mom wasn't acting right, so I'd ask my dad, is she sick? And he explained it all to me. It was exceptionally hard to deal with as a kid. I was powerless. She was a great person, but she had an addiction. And then he had said, I don't want to talk about the bad things. That's not what my mom was about. She was a performer. She was a mother. She loved people. She was the most caring person. She had the greatest sense of humor. After that, going into August of that same year, she begins a 10-year association with Capitol Records. So on September 24th, she made her TV debut on CBS in a version of her Palace Act. And this was the largest TV audience to that date to view a special program. And the program won an Emmy
That's
because of
awesome.
her. Yeah. Going into summer, July of 1956, she has a Las Vegas debut as highest paid entertainer at the time in the desert town. And then a couple months later in September, she has a second palace engagement over in New York City. That's 17 weeks. But the problem was with that run of shows, she actually ended up getting like all of the proceeds taken away because she was really bad with her money and she hadn't been paying taxes. So the IRS seized it. to
That
take
makes
care of
sense.
the debts. Yes. Then in October of 1957, she goes back to London for a 5-week Dominion Theatre program engagement, whatever you want to call it. Following that, in November, she did the Royal Command performance at Palladium. So she's like program after program after program after program, which it's like good for you because, you know, that's her career, but it's like, damn, she was busy. She did a short 2-week engagement to Coconut Grove in July of 1958. But the fun fact about this was her first live album recording. So that's
Oh.
cool. Yeah. In May of 1959, she became the first popular singer to play at the Metropolitan Opera House. So that, like, a lot of firsts. Like, that's the thing. Like, she's a trailblazer as far as that stuff goes, because she's a lot of firsts for a lot of freaking things. That same year, on November 18th, she was admitted to a hospital in New York for hepatitis. But we're going to jump ahead a couple years to April 13th, 1961. And this was the date of her Carnegie Hall performance. She also had an Academy Award nomination again for Best Supporting Actress for Judgment at Nuremberg. She's still going. Like, she's like, that's stuck in my head so bad because I don't know what interview it was. It might have been a Barbara Walters one or it might have been a different one, but it's like she was the queen of comebacks because look, time and time again, like, 12-week hospital stay, no big deal. Fucking MGM releases me, no big deal. Like, she just, you know what I'm saying? Like, she can't, like, that just speaks volumes for the talent she had.
Right.
So much so. And she did end up having her own TV special called The Judy Garland Show. This was with CBS, and it aired on February 25th, 1962. It was, at the time, the highest rated entertainment program in the network history. That's incredible.
That tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple months later, in May, she won a Grammy for Album of the Year and Best Solo Vocal Performance in the female category. So, fucking 2 Grammys. And in May, she begins filming for what would be her final film, I Could Go On Singing. And then in 63, her and Sid split to get a divorce. This is her longest marriage. They were married for 11 years.
Right.
So they were married a long time. And then in the end of 1964, she does a concert with Liza at the London Palladium. And on May 4th, her sister Mary Jane dies. And after this, when she does all the divorce stuff with Sid, she accuses him of domestic abuse and dependence on alcohol, and eventually won custody of Lorna and Joey. She was having money troubles. That's why she had to go to London and like take all these gigs and like do all this stuff. Because
let's just say she stays in arrears for a long time.
Yeah, like
forever.
It was just a lot of, yeah, I'm pretty sure like that's why she was doing so many shows, is because it's like they were taking so much of her money. So then she was left with like freaking nothing.
I don't think she ever paid taxes.
No.
Her whole career. So they were like, you owe us a lot of money.
Yeah. And then she was married and divorced in a 6-month period to a guy named Mark Heron, also in 1965. Now, after this, and Jess will probably talk about him more later, but she ended up meeting this guy who was 12 years younger than her, named Mickey Deans. And Mickey Deans was a nightclub manager. Now, if you guys have seen, so there's some stuff that's like different. If you watched the movie where Renee Zellweger plays her, it's just called Judy. There's some stuff that varies. And in the movie, they met out and they met at a party, and he woos her by surprising her in London by hiding under a room service tray. And then there's like a whole like, you know, thing. And then it turns into like him trying to make money off her, all this stuff. But like the way they actually met was when she was in New York, like he brought her drugs.
Right.
So yeah.
I was like, it's not romantic at all. He literally, it would be like, hi person, here's your drugs. Goodbye person. Thank you. Like that was literally, it was that.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a jackass too,
He's
because
a trash
like,
person.
yeah. I won't get into details because that's the next episode, but it's like, Jesus, he's a piece of shit. So moving on, February 20th, 1967, Century Fox offers her a role in Valley of the Dolls. Although she records I'll Plant My Own Tree and poses for costume tests, she ends up fired because of the same problem that, you know, everyone else has been having with her with being unpredictable, like the time thing I told you about, all of that. And like, also, like I mentioned, people were just so surprised because, you know, she'd always been so professional and all of this stuff. But it's like at this point, she's spiraled out of control with everything you know, with taking stuff and all of that. So I'm kind of like, are you really that surprised though?
I need
Not
to
hating
Google
on
it for
Judy,
ya.
but I'm just like, how are people surprised? I don't understand. And then in August of that year, she had her largest live audience. She had 108,000 people.
Damn.
Yeah, it was at the Boston Common. And just unfortunately, it was just a time where her addiction was just the worst of it. And she couldn't be reliable there either. She couldn't be reliable anywhere. But I did mention there was more gay stuff. So in 1967, the Advocate named Judy Garland the Elvis of homosexuals. And I'm like, I am loving this.
I love that.
Because, according to this article, as a stage performer, she drew in masses of gay male supporters who screamed along with the singer's music and fought to touch her hand on stage. And Judy loved her gay fans because when at a San Francisco press conference, of course, because it was the fucking 60s, they asked if she minded having such a large gay following, and she said, quote, "I could care less. I sing to people." I'm like, yes, Judy. Yes. And in the 60s, Time magazine interviewed, you ready for this? They interviewed a quote slew of psychologists to figure it out.
That tracks because they were like, we're gonna figure this. Maybe because they just like good music and nice people.
And then you know what they said? They said why she was like fine with the gays because Garland had spent so much of her life in tragedy. And then they go on to say, quote, "Homosexuals tend to identify with suffering, and so does Garland." Puke. I mean, I know we shouldn't be surprised, but ugh, gross.
And so we were like, that doesn't seem right.
And apparently the phrase, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?" became a safe invitation for gay men to talk about their sexual orientation because the Wizard of Oz, because she was Dorothy. And, you know, that was like their code for saying that. And then I also grabbed a quote from queer historian Dr. Justin Bendry. He did an interview with BBC and said, quote, "It's important to ask, for whom is Judy Garland resonant, important and iconic? It seems to be a significant category of gay men in particular who are invested in celebrities or the camp aesthetic that Garland embodies. It's also important to recognize that they aren't the totality of gay men." And it was said in different articles that Judy helped many gay men to, quote, "understand their own version of the world and to love themselves unapologetically," because she was a survivor doing her best to assert control in an industry that too often rejected her. And I'm just like, damn, we had to get deep. We had to get deep. It hurts my heart.
I do love the fact that there was this, like, in a time where being out was dangerous, that there was like
it was illegal. Like,
yes, it was.
Oh my God.
There was kind of a way that they could communicate with one another, and it had a good thing behind it.
There was another quote I just stuck in my notes that she said, and it says, "I would like audiences to know that I've been in love with them all of my life, and I tried to please. I hope I did." And see, like, that's just like also so heartbreaking because it's like she still thinks she's not good enough. Like,
for sure. When her formative years, she's being stood in front of a mirror being like, do you want to be the fat mannequin or do you want to be the skinny girl? Like, do you want to be the it girl or that? I mean, you're never going to live up to any expectation of you that they had. So of course she's not going to believe in herself because she didn't have people in her life who believed in her other than the fact that she could make the money.
Yeah. And she would have another hospital stay in Boston in June of 68. And she was reported to be there for several weeks. And obviously that meant she had to pull out of, you know, programs and performances and stuff. And her final US concert was at JFK Stadium in Philly with 20,000 people. There was a review of her performance in January of 1969. It came out on the 14th of that month in the Observer. And they described her as, quote, thinner now, almost haggard. Her hair flicked back like a boy's. Her orange sequined suit makes her jaunty. With hand on hip, she struts